In the Olivet Discourse, Jesus spoke about end-time pestilences in divers places and nation rising against nation. Matthew 24, verse 7 says, "For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences in divers places." Do we see wars and do we see pandemics of international proportions? Just look at China. What is happening in China? There are massive protests because of the zero COVID policy. The communist government doesn't take lightly to protest. The tragedy of Tiananmen Square still resides in the minds of many people, yet there are the protests. Many in China are calling for President Xi to step down. There has been a huge spike in COVID cases in China in December of 2022. Millions have been affected. It is a national disaster that even the communist government cannot hide from the world. China's National Health Commission will no longer publish daily COVID cases or numbers of deaths after leaked data showed hundreds of millions of people throughout the communist country were infected with the COVID virus in December of 2022. In a travel alert released on December 28th, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, flagged China's mainland, Hong Kong, and Macau as regions where U.S. travelers need to, quote, practice enhanced precaution. The CDC has also imposed mandatory COVID testing on all passengers flying from China. Beginning January the 5th, 2023, all air passengers over 2 years old, including those on a connecting flight through the United States, are to show airlines a negative test result within 2 days before their departure, or present proof of recovery from COVID-19 if they tested positive 10 days prior to the flight. Because of the protest in China, the communist regime dropped the year-long zero COVID policy in December. Since that time, however, China has seen a rapid spread of the virus. A recent internal memo estimated an infection of nearly 250 million in the first 20 days of December, the equivalent of about 3/4 of the U.S. population. The rapid rise of COVID cases in China has overwhelmed healthcare systems and has created a backlog of 30 days in crematoriums. Bodies of the dead are being incinerated as quickly as possible, yet as quickly as possible is not fast enough. Experts fear that dead bodies that have not been properly disposed of can create hazardous health conditions worse than the deaths caused by the COVID virus. Many of the Chinese COVID victims have had some bizarre reactions to the virus. Some have black tongues, others swollen eyes. Pretty Chinese women have unsightly blotches on their faces. Many believe that this is not an ordinary flu outbreak. It is the judgment of God on a nation that has a history of human rights abuses and especially cruel persecution against churches, pastors, and Christians. We must never forget that China had biological weapons ambitions long before the COVID-19 pandemic. Representative Brad Westrup from Ohio, who is also a medical doctor, is a member of the House Intelligence Committee. Westrup said that as far back as 2005, China's Institute of the Academy of Military Medical Sciences, the AMMS, had a biological and toxic weapons program that was conducting research on the SARS coronavirus. Part of the plan was to create a chimeric coronavirus that would look like it was not artificially created, but occurred naturally, even though that was not true. The very weapon that evil empire planned to unleash on the world has now fallen on the Chinese people. COVID is having a disastrous effect on China's economy. The International Harbin International Ice and Snow Sculpture Festival is now the largest ice and snow festival in the world. Harbin is a beautiful city in northeast China. It is at the same latitude as Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, one of the coldest capital cities in the world. In previous years, some 18 million visitors from all over the world would come to the festival. It generated more than $4 billion of revenue every year. At the 35th annual festival held in 2019, the festival's most popular attraction The Harbin ice and snow world took up over 600,000 square meters and included more than 100 landmarks. It was made from 110,000 cubic meters of ice and 120,000 cubic meters of snow. The festival also included ice sculptures by different artists from 12 different countries competing in the annual competition. However, with the danger presented by a particularly virulent variant of COVID, people are staying away. It will be one of China's most spectacular business failures of all time. As a matter of fact, there is a strange phenomenon occurring in China at the present time. Known as the Liing Flat lifestyle, called Tangping in Mandarin, it is rippling through the young people of China. The Liing Flat phenomenon is a social protest movement to pressure from the government to overwork while getting very little in return. The work week in China is often regarded as a rat race with ever-diminishing returns. The phenomenon is also identified by the phrase, "let it rot," which means to endure the present deteriorating situation rather than trying to turn it around. It is the Chinese equivalent to the hippie counterculture movement in the United States. The Chinese Communist Party has moved to quickly condemn the Liing Flat phenomenon. Promoting Tangping is strictly forbidden. Internet censors are told to prohibit and remove any material promoting Liing Flat. Yet government condemnation of the Liing Flat idea is only causing it to spread more rapidly. For a government that relies on force, threat, and intimidation, it has met its match. So what's going on in China? Is this the judgment of God? Why would God be angry at China? Well, simply because the Chinese Communist Party in general and Chinese President Xi Jinping are some of the most evil, God-hating people who have ever walked on the planet. Mao Zedong was a terrible man who perpetrated unbelievable evil upon his people. His evil behavior and self-serving ambitions led to the deaths of more than 60 million of his own people. Yet, President Xi is far worse because of the technology at Xi's fingertips. Technology for spying on people, controlling people, and intimidating people. President Xi makes Adolf Hitler look like the fluffy Easter bunny munching on a carrot. The curse of God is upon him. He has sought to change the Bible and make it more compatible with Chinese culture. In his version of the woman caught in adultery, Jesus is the one who throws the first stone. This evil man has torn down churches, mosques, Buddhist temples, tried to wipe out the Uyghurs in Xinjiang province, and has done more to try to exterminate Christianity than any other individual on the planet. By God's grace, Xi hasn't exterminated Christianity, but given it a new vigor and vitality. The underground church is energized by the Back to Jerusalem vision and has a vital ministry, especially to Muslim nations in the 1040 window. Some predict that revival will come to China. I believe it is taking place right now. China has produced some of the most faithful Christian martyrs the world has ever seen. Their blood is crying out for vengeance, and vengeance has already come upon the Chinese Communist Party. One of the most notable Chinese pastors who is now in prison is Pastor Wang Yi, former pastor of the Early Rain Covenant Church in Chengdu, China. He publicly decried the evil of the communist regime in his widely shared Declaration of Faithful Disobedience. In this declaration, Pastor Wang Yi wrote, quote, "Persecution against the Lord's church and against all Chinese people who believe in Jesus Christ is the most wicked and the most horrendous evil of Chinese society. This is not only a sin against Christians, it is also a sin against all non-Christians. For the government is brutally and ruthlessly threatening them and hindering them from coming to Jesus. There is no greater wickedness in this world than this," close quotes. I want to encourage our viewers to pray for China. As I speak, there are more and more indications that God is about to bring full revival to China. When 1,400,000,000 oppressed people have the freedom to worship the true and living God, good things will begin to occur.